Hi there, I'm Lauren and welcome back to my YouTube channel Sweet Smiling Soul, where I talk about all things sewing most of the time. Today I am going to show you how to make this macrame yoga mat strap. This was a custom order from a friend and I thought it might be a nice idea for a video today. So I'm going to show you how I made this yoga mat strap from start to finish, and you can hopefully make one yourself. They do come in handy, especially when those elastic straps that come with the mat start to kind of deteriorate and get all stretched out. These macrame yoga mat straps are really sturdy and they're also really cute. So it's a good alternative and a good way to kind of look after your yoga mat as well. So I'm going to show you all the materials that you need. I'm going to show you how I go about making a yoga mat strap. There are so many different ways you can go about it, but I'm going to try and show you the easiest way possible. We're going to work with 4 different knots. So we're going to use mostly a square knot, which is this one here, and we'll also do the twist knot. We'll also create a tassel at the end, and then I'll show you how the lark's head knot at the beginning of the project is also created. And then hopefully you have a good foundation for many other macrame projects. I feel like a yoga mat strap is a beginner friendly project when it comes to macrame. So yeah, I'm going to do my best to show you how I go about it, and hopefully you can create something similar. So let's get started. So the materials that you'll need for this macrame yoga mat strap are some cotton cord. So I have this macrame cord that I purchased from Bunnings in Australia, but you could purchase it from Amazon or Spotlight or a craft store of some kind. What I'm using here is 4mm thickness, but 5mm also works, 6mm works as well. I wouldn't go anything less than 4mm in thickness just because it makes the project a lot longer. If you have 4 or 5 or 6, then that should work fine. So you'll also need 2 wooden rings. So I purchased a packet of these on Amazon. They usually come in a larger pack. You could also use metal rings, but I find the wooden ones work quite well. I'm also using a couple of wooden beads just because I had them on hand, but this is optional. I'm just going to add them in to create a little bit of a feature. You'll also need some scissors. I've already cut my cord out here. I have 2 pieces here that are 3 meters in length, and then I have 2 pieces that are 12 meters in length. I might have a little bit more than I need here, but it's better to have a bit more than not enough when it comes to macrame, because you just don't know how much rope is going to be chewed up. You'll also need something like a doorknob so that you can hang your rings off it and kind of use it as something to support your project while you're tying all the knots together. You could even use a hook in the wall, something that's sturdy. I've got a sticker hook here. I'm not sure if that's very sturdy, so I think I'm going to use a doorknob, but that could be an option. Or if you have some hooks that you hang over the door, like coat hooks or anything, that might come in handy. I could also use this pole here on the shelf that I've got, maybe hang or even like a hook like this. I think I'm going to work from this shelf that I've got here because I've got a hook that's hanging, and I find that that's actually quite easy for me. So we've got our 2 rings and we're going to be making 2 separate projects before we join them together. So I'm going to put this one aside for now, and I'm going to start with the first one. And what we do for the first one will be the exact same thing that we do for the second one. The cord that we're using for the first part of the project is 1 piece of 12-meter cord and 1 piece of 3-meter cord. So we'll use 1 of each for each project. And what we're going to do is take this short piece, so the one that's 3 meters in length, and we're going to fold it in half. So I just like to add a little knot to the ends to make sure that they're not unraveling as I make the project. So once we fold it in half, we want to take the looped end and we want to poke it through the front, bring it over the back, and we're going to take these 2 threads and put it through that loop. So this is called a lark's head knot, and that's going to be our middle piece that we work with. Then we take our 12-meter cord and we halve it, but instead of tying the ends together, we're just going to tie an individual knot. I'm going to fold it in half, and then I'm just going to take this, put a little knot in the end, and again that'll just stop things from unraveling. So like that, and we just halve it and keep bringing the cord right up until we get to that loop. It might tangle a little bit because we are working with such a long piece of cord, but as we move through the project, the cord will shorten, so it'll get easier to work with as time goes on. And we're going to poke it through, but this time I'm just kind of going to separate it so that it kind of goes on the outside of that first knot that we made. So I'll poke it through and I'll bring my cord through that loop again. We can see a lark's head knot is forming next to this, but I want this to be in the middle. For the longer piece of cord, I'm just going to make this loop a little bit bigger so that I can push through the middle cord and then have it kind of sitting inside. So I'll bring that over and then bring that down. And it's a lark's head knot, but it's kind of over the top of the other knot. So you might want to bring it down, bring this loop down a little bit and just kind of pull it over that middle lark's head knot. It's creating the same shape, but it's just that this one is a little bit wider because it's kind of tucking everything in and wrapping around that middle one. So now we've got 4 cords to work with, and these 2 middle cords, that's the short cord that we're working with. That isn't going to shorten at all. That is going to stay the same length the whole time. And then these 2 cords on the side will shorten as time goes on and they'll be easier to work with. So we're going to start creating our first square knot. So we kind of create a D shape over to the right, and then we're going to bring this long cord on the left. So from the front, underneath and up behind, and pulling it through that loop. So I'm just going to keep bringing the cord through. It's going to take some time for those first 10 or 20 knots that we do until the cord starts to shorten. So once we've pulled it through, we're going to pull it up and kind of create the beginning of our square knot, and then from here I'm going to do it on the opposite side and then take this cord on the right, and from the front we're going to bring it to the back and then up and around through that loop that we created. So I'll do this a few times so that you can see it does take some time to get it right if you've never done this before. But when we pull it up, we create this kind of square shape. That's called a square knot. So we've got our first square knot finished, and if we do the second one, we go on the right side this time, create that loop at the front of our cords, and then we bring the left cord underneath, over through the back, and then towards the front through that loop. Bring the cord all the way through, and that's the first part of our square knot. Then if we do the same on the opposite side, bring the right cord from the front, underneath, up, behind, and through towards the front, through that loop. So you might need to pause and re-watch this part a couple times to get it right, but I'll just show you how that works. So now we've got our second one. And the reason why you know it's complete is because there's kind of like a little loop here that you can count, you know, as you go. So we're going to be creating about 70 knots on both pieces, so this one and the second one, more or less. It depends how long you want your strap to be. So this is half a square knot and you can't see that bit on the side, so there's 1, 2, but we need to do this one more time to create that third. So then we've got the third one. So I would always go from the right, because on the left side it's going to be different. You can count on the left if you like, but I find it's easier to count on the right because we started on the right, so it makes sense for me to be counting my loops on the right and making sure I've got the amount of square knots that I want. And once you do this several times, you'll get faster as well. I remember in the beginning when I first did this, it took me a long time to understand the square knot and how it's working, and like making sure that I was completing my square knot. It can be easy to just do half of it and forget, and then if you go on the right side twice, it's going to start twisting. And that's okay if you want to make a twist knot, because that also looks really pretty. But when we're working with square knots, we've got to make sure that we're always doing one on the right, one on the left, one on the right, one on the left. So I can show you now what a twisted knot will look like if I went on the right again. So I've got half of my square knot here. I've just done it on the right side, and I need to go on the left to create the square knot. But if I didn't go on the left and I just did it again on the right, then you're going to see that this starts to twist, and it's more noticeable the more times you go on one side. That would be the beginning of a twisted knot, so it kind of looks a little bit different. If we did it again, it would start to twist all the way around, and it does look really pretty, and I might add one later in the project, but for now I'm just going to stick with the square knot. So I've undone that, and I'm going on the left side just to complete that square knot. There we go. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 knots so far. So when you're pulling the knot tight, you want to make sure that the middle threads aren't, getting bunched up. You want to keep them straight. So I like to just kind of gently pull on those and then use my other fingers to kind of gradually bring it up and then tighten it. Otherwise I would be bunching up the middle cord there, and then that would be chewing up the middle cord, and we want that cord to stay the same length the whole time. So that's just another little tip when you're trying to create a neat finish. So this is a basic knot that you can use for many macrame projects. It's kind of the foundational knot for a lot of different things. So I use this knot to create handbags, to create yoga mat bags, to create bookmarks and plant hangers, and there's so many different projects you can make with this technique. So if you know how to do a square knot, you're kind of already off to a great start. You can do so much with that. So I'm going to show you probably 3 or 4, maybe 4 different types of knots, and you can decide what you want to practice more and what you want to experiment with for other projects, and hopefully it gives you a good starting point if you want to start getting into macrame. So I've just completed my 50th knot. So I've counted the little side loops, and I'm at this 50 mark now. So I think from here I'm going to add a bead. If you're using wooden beads, you might want to add one here, but it's up to you. It's totally optional. I ended up knotting my middle pieces individually because they were started to twist. So I'm just going to undo probably the one that's less frayed, and I'm gonna try and poke it through a wooden bead. So I've got a bead here. This hole is about 5 millimeters, I would say, and maybe a little bit smaller. So it should be big enough to put one of the cords through. So I've taken the knot out of one of my end pieces. So I'm adding the bead to one of the middle pieces, and I've put aside the 2 side cords for now. I'm just going to twist that. You might need to trim it with some scissors if it's too frayed, but if you twist it in the direction that it kind of naturally goes, you can start to add a bead. And I usually twist the bead at the same time as the rope, and it eventually goes through the hole, and then I push it as well. So I'm twisting and pushing till it comes through. That's in the middle there, so I'm just having to stretch away from my shelf at the moment just to make it easier. But basically I'm placing that back cord as neat as I can towards the back, and I'm bringing the bead to the center, and now I'm going to create a square knot like I normally would. So like that, that's the first part. And once I've done the first part of it and made it tight, I can kind of manipulate the back. You can see that that's in the center. And then I'll just finish the square knot like I normally do. And that just kind of keeps it in place. So you can see I've got the bead, it's in the center, and then at the back it looks like that. So I put that at the 50, in between 50 and 51. And now I'm gonna just keep going with my square knot. I think I'm gonna go for another 10 knots, and then I'm gonna switch it up and start doing a twisted knot, and I'll show you how I do that. So I've created another 10 knots after the bead. So now I'm going to create a twisted knot, And this is the knot where you're just working on one side. So I like to use the right side, but you might want to use the left, it's up to you. You do half a square knot, so you're only working with one side of a square knot, so it's always the right. And as you keep going just on the right side, it'll start to twist. And I've done this 3 times now, so I think I might do it 10 or 15 times. I'll see how long I can make it with the amount of cord that I've got left. So only working with the right side. So it's starting to take shape. So you can see it's starting to twist. So that's what I'm going to keep doing. I'll keep going with it. So if I count now, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you just kind of count the loops on one side. So that's 8. Maybe 15 or 16 might be the way to go, just based on experience and seeing how it's taking shape. But the main thing is that I want to finish on a flat edge, but this is flat and you can see that this isn't flat just yet. So I think I need to keep going a couple more times. So I've got 18 knots there. So I've decided that I'm quite happy with the length of my strap here. So now I'm going to do the exact same thing again for the other ring, and then I'll show you how I put them together to create the yoga mat strap. So I've got my 2 finished pieces, and now I'm going to test how it looks around my yoga mat before I tie everything together. So the first step is to create a loop. So we want to take the bottom of our macrame cord and we want to loop it through, making sure that nothing's twisted. So like that. Then I'm going to loop it around one end of my yoga mat. So there's one end, so that's what that's going to look like. I'll do the same for the other side, so making sure that the bead that I added is facing outward. Place it on the end of my yoga mat. So we use this part to slide the mat through the loops and secure it. Then the next step is to join these 2 pieces together. So I ended up removing about 5 of the knots from the twist just because I felt like it was too long. If you want, you could do the same, but if you're happy with the length, just test it against your body. Like bring these 2 pieces together and hang it over your shoulder and then just see if it's long enough for you. So now I'm bringing both pieces together. I'm bringing them together so that everything's like kind of attached to the mat, just to make sure that nothing's getting twisted. And you might want to grab like a clip or something and hold it in place, or it might be okay. I'm just going to place it there for a minute, and I'm going to cut one of the lengths off. I do have quite a bit of excess, so I was left with about 1 meter of cord. So what I'm going to do is just cut one of those off, and then I'm going to use that for this next step. If you don't have enough cord, then you'll just want to cut a piece that's, yeah, I've got about 1 meter here, but you won't need that much. If it's a little bit less, that's okay. So I would say another piece that's about 50 centimeters or so. Before I even make the tassel, I think I'm going to trim this excess cord off so it's a little bit easier to work with. So from here, we're going to take our 2 pieces, bring them together so that the flat bits are facing each other. And we want to make sure that nothing's twisted. Then we've got all our bits of cord hanging at the bottom, and we're kind of pressing the top together. We're going to take our spare piece of cord and we're going to place it so that we've got some overhang at the top, and we're going to create a little bit of a loop at the bottom. And then keeping everything together, I'm going to start wrapping these 2 pieces together. So we want to do it so that the first one's quite tight and we're going to be stacking them on top of each other. So the first couple are the most important because you want to make sure that everything's secure, and you still want to make sure you've got this little bit overhanging and the loop down the bottom here. So once you get those first couple wrapped, you can keep going and it'll be easier to create the tassel. So I would wrap it maybe 5 times, but you might want to do it a little bit more Just depends how thick the cord is that you're working with. I've wrapped it 6 times there. So you want to make sure it's tight and everything's kind of stacked. So you can see there that I've got stacks. From here we're gonna put that long piece of cord through the loop, and then we're going to kind of bring the loop up, and then we're going to take this bit that's hanging and we're going to pull it, and that's just going to tuck everything in underneath the wrapped cord. So the tighter you pull it, the more secure it's going to be. It's kind of pulled everything up underneath the wraps here. So once you're happy with the tightness of everything and everything looks neat, then we're going to take our scissors and we're going to cut close to the top. I might just pull one more time, because once you cut it you won't be able to pull it anymore. So I think that's quite secure. So then from there we're going to cut it close to the edge, and I usually just spread that around in there. Then we shorten the tassel. So it's up to you how long you want your tassel to be. I usually make it about 8 or 10 centimeters long, and then I just cut, and then I trim it down if it needs to. Like if it needs to be evened out, then I just get my scissors and trim it a little bit more. You could leave your tassel like that, or you could unravel the ends, or you could unravel each piece depending on the cord that you have. This one has got 3 strands, but it also unravels to be quite fine. So I could even brush it out if I wanted to. But I might just start with the ends. It's really up to you how you want to finish it. So it could be like that. Or I think I might go all the way. I won't brush it, but I'll leave the 3 strands separated. Just looks a little bit more full. But it's totally up to you. You could keep it together, you could shorten it even more, you could leave it long. And then once everything's unraveled, you can decide if you want to keep it that length, because it kind of changes the look of it a bit. I think I might just shorten it a tiny bit. So to take it on and off, you just loosen the ties, and you take the yoga mat out, and then you've got your yoga mat strap there. To put it back on, you just widen the loops. And then you take the other side, widen the loop, place it on there. So let's test it out. So that's the strap. I'm happy with it. I think she'll like it, and it can go over the shoulder as well. Easy to carry, easy to adjust, and yeah, easy to use. Let me know what you think of this macrame yoga mat strap, and if you decide to make one yourself. It's a really easy craft project once you get the hang of the knots. I know in the beginning it can seem a little bit overwhelming and you might have to practice a few times to get the knot right, but once you get it down, you're good to go and you can create so many things. So I ended up using a fair bit less cord than I thought I would. This was the short piece in the middle, so we've left about 50 centimeters or so, and I have a long piece here, which was my working cord on the side. I had about 1 meter left on both sides of that, but I used one of those for the tassel. So there are other smaller macrame projects where you can use the leftover cord. So I might make some tassels and add them to a cushion cover. I've added them to a throw before that I made, like a patchwork blanket thing. And yeah, it was a good way to use up those little bits. You could also create bookmarks or jewelry, or it depends what you want to do, but I won't teach you how to do all that today. At the end of the day, it is better to have more cord than not enough, because there is nothing worse than being halfway through or even almost finished, like with a project, and your cord runs out and you have nothing to work with anymore. So there are ways around it, but those ways, in my experience, have been quite annoying. So I prefer to usually 4 times the amount of cord when I'm making measurements. Hopefully it made a bit of sense once we started. Let me know if you decide to make one, and let me know what you think of this yoga mat strap. Thank you so much for watching. It was a little bit different today, not really sewing related, but it's nice to have a break every now and then and do something different. So yeah, I really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.